bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good football morning, Birds fans. Thanks for getting up and streaming in with us on Birds 365. Bright and early. You got your Mac and Mac guys both up and ready to rock, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. We got two really good guests. We're going to take you on a little bit of stroll down Eagles memory lane today. We'll give you details on that coming up in just a second. Johnny Mac, 2 weeks to the day. 2 weeks from today, the Eagles will officially open up training camp. John McMullen will get his first on-field. Are you guys on the field or off to Sunday?
No, not till Wednesday. So for us,
I was going to say day after.
Tuesday's reporting day for the Eagles. So the players will be in. In the old school days, you would stake out Westchester or Lehigh and, try to get a soundbite from the players walking in, but now you can't even do that because NovaCare Complex is secured. So unless they allow us in there, and they don't until Wednesday. So yeah, a lot of things have changed, but players report 2 weeks from today.
So it's getting dangerously close to 2023 football season. But as we make our way through the summer that leads up to the actual season, it's the seasons of lists. It's the seasons of looking back at things gone by. It's the seasons of projections and predictions. And we'll mix a lot of that in with you today, including John McMullen and Ed Kratz's list of the top 25 Eagles coming into the 2023 season. We're not 23 deep, but we're getting damn close. You cracked the top 5 today, John. We ran down the guys that were blatantly obvious going to be in the top 5. The question was what order they were going to come out in. And your number 5 is the Eagles. Is it fair to say best pass rusher off last year and projecting this year?
Yeah, it's fair to say. 19 and a half sacks. It's fair to say when you include the postseason. Hassan Reddick was tremendous last season. And he's the guy. He is the guy when it comes to that 70 sacks. He's the cleanup hitter on the 70 sacks. So, and on our list, the number 1 defensive player on the Eagles. I think that's also fair to say. Coming off last season, and it's evidenced by the fact that he was 4th in the Defensive Player of the Year voting. That's pretty good. I think people are upset by that, but that's pretty good. I think Nick Bosa was 1. He won it. I know Chris Jones. I forget. I wrote it and I forget who number 2 was. But either way, he had a tremendous season,
and all at the outside linebacker position, which is very impressive. Yeah, I knew I'd get John to go with that one. He's not a linebacker.
Overhang player. Get back to our Jonathan Gannon terminology.
Do you like overhang better than edge?
I do like overhang, but you're fighting a losing battle.
Yeah, I like.
Because, you know, they're trying to describe what the player is in their own inside the building. That's what they call it. That's what they call the position. But yeah, it's a losing battle. So
Yeah,
edge is the best you can do.
yeah, I like edge better than overhang, but just again, we're getting into a semantical debate and splitting hairs. Here's the best way to determine it for you fans who want to continue to try and make a case for Hassan Reddick being a linebacker. And again, yes, the Eagles are the ones who are deploying him. They're the ones who are putting him in the position and asking him to do X, Y, or Z on a given play. I think the best way to determine it is the way that they break out when they're not on the field into meetings. They have an overhang coach. They have an edge coach. N'Kobe Dean is not in the same meeting with Hassan Reddick, okay? So if they were linebackers, those guys would be in the same meeting room with the same coach. They're not. They have their own positional coach, defensive ends, and the quote-unquote overhang or edge players. He's an edge guy, plain and simple. Just leave it at that. He's not a linebacker. I know the terminology changes, and we got two really good guests who've been around for a long time. When linebackers were actually linebackers, and there were either 3 or 4 of them out there on the field on any given play. That's just not the NFL in 2023. What we know is Hassan Reddick's going to be a big-time contributor on the Eagles' defense this year. 19 and a half sacks is a big friggin' number. He's going to be hard-pressed to do that again. I don't know how many times we said this during the offseason. The Eagles as a team and Hassan Reddick individually, they're going to have a very difficult time reproducing what they did last year as far as numbers go. Doesn't mean they can't be as good, if not better, even with lesser numbers, right, John?
Yeah, I mean, they could be a better team. I'm with you. They're not going to get 70 sacks. They're probably not going to be the number 2 defense. They're probably not going to be the number 1 passing defense. But if you win the Super Bowl, technically we'll have that discussion probably with Ray Didinger. And, I remember Ray saying, somebody asking Ray, is this the best Eagles team? And Ray's been around for all of them. And he said, yes, but they have to win. This was before the Super Bowl and they didn't win. And I know that's your thought process too. If you don't win, you're not the best.
No.
So ultimately, when people look back, and I use the Billies World Series team because they had better teams than the team that won, but that team will always be remembered. So if they win the Super Bowl, doesn't really matter if they're number 1 on defense or have 70 sacks. But yeah, that's a long way off. So could they win the Super Bowl? Sure. Are they going to be as good statistically? Probably not. So that's,
the only good part about it is that I don't think Eagle Nation will harp on it because there were so few Jonathan Gannon fans that they're not going to want to put Sean Desai on blast because, maybe I shouldn't say it. Maybe they can build up some non-tolerance for Sean Desai as quickly as they did for Jonathan Gannon. Just a change for change's sake in Eagles fans' thought process might be enough to let it slide that the Eagles are only the 4th-ranked defense. So they're only on pace for 58 sacks halfway through the season rather than the 70, and people will still be okay with it because it's not Jonathan Gannon, but we'll see about that. We haven't mentioned Gannon in a while, and it's one that you and I get a lot of feedback on, that we were both more Gannon fans than detractors. How bad is it going to be for him out in Arizona this year? I think he's got a bad football team. His quarterback isn't going to be ready to start the season. They added some upgrades in the draft because they were as bad as they were last year, but still, Buda Baker's situation still to be determined. I think Arizona's going to be a really bad football team, and when they come to the link this year, it could be a beatdown of epic proportions. How tough is Jonathan Gannon's first year as a head coach going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be bad. I mean, if he wins 4 or 5 games, he's going to be overachieving. I think a lot of it has to do with, Kyler Murray and how quickly he can get back on the field. Nobody knows that yet. Nobody knows how cautious they might want to. They might want to tank the season. Who knows how they're going to? They have a new GM. They have a new GM. They might want to go after Caleb Williams. Who knows? He doesn't have any skin in the Kyler Murray game. Now he's got to figure out how to get past the contract. But I think a lot of it has to do. Now, the good news for Jonathan Gannon, he's very close to Monty Ossenfort. That's why he has the job. That's why the tampering, blah, blah, blah. So I don't think it's going to be one and done like a lot of people are saying. Now, if you start talking about 0-17, yeah, maybe it's one and done. But I think he's a good football coach. I think most people who know him, Nick Sirianni will tell you he's a good football coach. I think if anything, he will overachieve to a certain standpoint. But that's one of the things about this generation. They do not like, most players do, and you see it with Budda Baker, you saw it with DeAndre Hopkins. You'll eventually see it with every good player they have. They do not want to play on rebuilding situations. Now, back in the old days, not everybody, there were still people, but there were a lot of people who took pride in building something from, the foundation up. That's difficult, man. And that's something that both Monty and Jonathan have to deal with. How do you deal with it? I don't know. That's a good question. But, go 180 for Nick Sirianni. Nick always mentions, Nick is very aware that for a first-time head coach, he landed in a good situation, good offensive line, good defensive line. Coming off a bad season, and much of that bad season had to do with the injuries on the offensive line. Talent on the offensive and defensive line. He knows he got lucky because typically you're in a situation like Jonathan Gannon or Shane Steichen where you're in complete rebuild mode.
You're right. Sirianni in a much better position than either of the two guys who decided to go elsewhere this year off the Eagles staff last year. And a quick aside, and we got Ray Didinger scheduled to join us coming up in a little over 5 minutes from now. I remember having a conversation on the field at Yankee Stadium. This was years ago. I was up covering a Yankee game, and Lee Mazzilli was the Yankees' first base coach, I believe. And I knew Mazzilli from his Mets days. And there were rumors flying that the Tampa Rays were going to offer Lee Mazzilli the managerial position. And the Rays were just terrible. This was before they got certain people in place and they became one of the best building organizations in all of baseball. They were last place every year running for 3 or 4 straight years. There's a bad expansion baseball team, and the rumors were flying. So I saw Mazzilli on the field, and I knew him well enough to be able to go and talk to him off the record. And I said, "You're not going to take that job, are you? I know that you want to manage, so you're a big name, and the Yankees are good. So you're not." He goes, "Of course I'm going to take that job." I said, "Why would you want to? You're being hired to be fired. It's not going to turn around anytime. Why the hell would you want that job?" He said, "Jody, there's 30 of them, and you never know if you're going to be offered one again. So when someone offers you the position to be one of 30 guys on the planet, you say yes." And maybe it had to do with my upbringing, where I was coming from, a non-player, whatever. I said, "No, you don't. I would rather keep spinning the wheel to see if my name came up somewhere else where I had a chance than take a no chance operation." Did Gannon make a mistake? I know he was close to getting a Houston job last year, so it probably got a little frustrating on him, but he's still one of the more respected assistant coaches, call them what you want, coordinators, aspiring head coaches in the league. He make a mistake by taking that Arizona job?
No, I
You
and
and Lee Mazzilli. I disagree with both of you.
Now, part of it's what Lee said, but also you have an added layer in the NFL versus Major League Baseball. Maybe your theory's more of an option for a Shane Steichen because he's an offensive guy. If you throw on top that you're a defensive guy and you get a head coaching offer, you got to take it. But the second part for Jonathan Gannon, he's very close with the GM. They're friends. So it's actually a perfect situation for him personally. Getting a job as a defensive guy, because it's really hard in the modern NFL. And two, being with a GM that you're so close to. And in theory, you're going to have a bit of a honeymoon period. And then you gotta have confidence in your ability and confidence to turn things around, which I'm sure he does. But the first year, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be easy. But yeah, I understand what Lee Mazzilli was saying. 1 of 30, 1 of 32 in the NFL. But again, even worse in the NFL, Jody, from the perspective of a defensive guy, it's not 1 of 32. It's like you're very limited to teams that are looking on the defensive side of the ball, especially in this era.
Here's one thing I will say for Gannon going forward. Someone should do the research on it, like Ray Didinger, who's a great researcher, unlike Jody McDonald, who's not. How many guys get that second chance? The percentage is okay. It's not minimal, but a lot of guys, even after not getting the job done as their first time as a head coach, get a second chance. People forget that Bill Belichick coached the Cleveland Browns and got a second chance, and he kind of went on to New England to become Bill Belichick. So a lot of times you do get a second chance as long as you're just not god-awful the first time. Here's a problem. I think the Cardinals are going to be god-awful, and this will be the only time, Jonathan. Add to the fact that John McMullen rightfully states defensive guys you're swimming upstream to begin with anyway. Good luck getting that second job, Jonathan. All right, our next guest our first guest of the day has had many a job, written for many a newspaper, written many a book, television, radio, you name it, he's done it when it comes to chronicling the Philadelphia Eagles. The great Ray Didinger joins us next here on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the Mommy Slam Dunk Champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES. That's what we're here to talk about. John McMullen, Jordan McDonough on Birds 365, and there's no better guy to do it than our next guest. He has only been chronicling the Philadelphia Eagles for 53 years. As good as it ever gets at doing so, Ray Didinger, good enough to join us here on Birds 365. You look relaxed, Ray Diddy.
Yeah.
Feeling pretty relaxed, Jody. I am, as a matter of fact. Yeah, it's good to be with you guys.
Good on you.
Good to see you, Ray. And I love when you have the Emmys up. It's like Emmy Day on Birds 365. I love that. But Ray's, I want to mention Ray's book, One Last Read, the collected works of the world's slowest. I got one too. World's slowest sports writer. It's coming out in paper book. I think it's apropos of Ray because it's Amazon Prime Day, so maybe people can get a deal. Go there, wherever you get your books. But thrilled to have you here. And I want to start before we get into the Eagles. We're going to get into plenty of the Eagles, but the New York Times yesterday got rid of its sports department. And I just thought that was apropos. We're going to have Ray, Hall of Fame writer, just depressing. When you saw that, and yet the New York Times, Ray, getting rid of their sports desk, just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sort of gives new meaning to the term sign of the times,
Yeah.
because it is. I mean, that's kind of where the newspaper industry is going. And I say that with great sadness because that's where I started and that's where I spent most of my career. And, you know, in my mind, I've never really stopped being a writer. So when I see that part of the business withering and dying, it makes me really sad. You know, the way it works now, I mean, I've read all the stories and they say that, well, nobody on the actual sports department is going to be let go as such, but they will be reassigned. But the whole sports coverage will now come from the Atlantic, which they had purchased. I'm sorry, the Athletic,
yeah.
which they had purchased, not the Atlantic, the Athletic, which they had purchased. And they're going to now provide the sports coverage. But you know, if they can just liquidate the sports department of the New York Times, you know, where does this stop?
Yeah.
And you know, it's a rough thing, John and Jody, that you know, a lot of times I get asked to go to colleges and talk to journalism students. You know, and when kids are in college or studying journalism, the obvious question they would ask, as I would have asked in their places, you know, okay, what are my job prospects? Where do I go from here? What do you tell them now? You know, what do you tell them now? I mean, when I was coming out of Temple in 1968, it was purely a newspaper world. I mean, there was no cable TV. There really was no sports talk radio. I mean, everybody got their information from the newspaper. I mean, you guys are old enough to remember that.
Yep.
And now we're living in a world where newspapers have become rather irrelevant, and now we're approaching a time where they're almost going to be non-existent. So what do you tell young people? Oh, hey kids, go out there and get in that industry and make your mark. You know, in good conscience, you just can't do it. It's really. I'm just glad that I'm kind of where I am in my career, and I'm not that kid coming out of Temple right now, because I don't know where I'd go to look for a job.
Yeah.
Forget about ink stained. All you need to know is .com. If you want to be a journalist, you want to be a writer, you're going to be doing so on an internet site.
You're right, Jody. That's where you got to go. That's about the only avenue that's left.
I hate to do this very early in the show, very early in an interview with Ray. I got to throw the challenge flag. Ray Didinger retired from NBC Sports Philadelphia, except he didn't. He was back again last year. Ray Didinger retired from WIP, except he didn't. He jumps on shows and contributes all the time. When I see the title of your book, One Last Read, why do I doubt it, Didinger? Why do I think that that's not happening, that there's going to be another Ray Diddy book to be read?
I'm not making any promises.
There it is. There it is. He's giving himself a backdoor.
No, not really. Not really. I mean, it was a year ago, May, when I did announce my retirement, and it was with full intention of retiring. I mean, if the Eagles had not gone off on the run that they did, I probably would be retired. And I really was for really the bulk of last football season. I was out of the fray. I mean, I was going to see my granddaughter play field hockey on Saturdays. Instead of sitting in with Glenn, as I had done for 22 years, I was going out to watch my 2 grandsons play organized football, and I was really enjoying it. But, the Eagles season went on that historic trajectory, and come December, both WIP and NBC Sports Philly said, hey, listen, it's obvious these guys are going to the playoffs. Would you come back and work the postseason with us? And, given the way the season was going, how could you say no?
Right.
Yeah.
Did. But that was, and none of this was planned, and none of it to me really represents coming out of retirement. It's just that the Eagles kind of rewrote the script for me.
Yeah, man. We've talked about that a lot, Ray, and you're great to talk because you've seen all these Eagles teams, the legendary teams, the Super Bowl 52 team going back to 1960. You know the history of this organization better than anyone. I'm a Johnny come lately. I've been here since 2016 covering this team. Covered the NFL since the mid 90s, covered the 98 Vikings. I always said that was the best team I covered until last year. And I covered the Super Bowl 52 team, but I think last year's team was better. They didn't finish the job. Where are you when it comes to history that team last year is sort of in franchise lore, so to speak?
If they had won the Super Bowl, you probably would have had to say they were the best team. You probably would have had to say that. The fact that they didn't, you can't say that now. At least I can't. I've said all along that I still believe that the greatest Eagles team, and nobody remembers this, was the 48-49 back-to-back world champion teams, which, if you look at their statistics, to me rank with one of the great franchises ever. They're still they were the first, and they are still the only NFL team to win back-to-back championship games by shutout. That had never happened before. It has never happened since. And they did it. They shut out the Chicago Cardinals 7-0 to win the first one. And then in 49, they came back and shut out the dynamic Los Angeles Rams offense with not one, but 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Waterfield and Van Brocklin, shut them out 14-0 to win back-to-back shutout championship games. And we're just dominant in a way that you just don't see teams be dominant with Van Buren and Bednarik and all those guys. So I felt all along that was the best team ever. And I've tried to make that case. But if the Eagles had actually finished the journey last year and they had beaten the Kansas City Chiefs, looking at everything they'd accomplished all during that season, you could have had a pretty good argument. But, when they lost, and, it's still to me a very tough loss to swallow because I still believe they were the better team. Yeah, it's so funny. When they beat the Patriots in Super Bowl 52, I didn't think they were, but they pulled it off and they won it. Last year, I thought they were the better team, and to lose it in the fashion that they lost it really, really stinks. Still does to this day.
But Ray, let me ask you this question, and I'm sure you've been asked it before, but maybe not in a while. The Philadelphia Eagles will attempt to go from going to the Super Bowl and losing and going to the Super Bowl and winning. History tells us that's very difficult to do. Mm-hmm. When you go to the Super Bowl and you lose, your prospects the next year just haven't worked out. If you're purely judging what the results have been for the NFL since they started the Super Bowl, not a good proposition, not trending well going forward. Why is that? Why is it as difficult? The results are what they are, that it's virtually impossible. I don't want to say impossible, but the numbers are against you. Going from losing a Super Bowl to trying to win one. Why is it so difficult a task?
Well, I think you have to start with the numbers, and they're pretty scary when you look at them. Other than the Eagles game, the previous 56 Super Bowls, 56, that's not a small sample. Okay? Right. 56 of them, only 8 of the teams that lost got back to the Super Bowl the next year. 8 out of 56. I'm not even talking you went back and won it.
Right.
Just got back. 8 out of 56. So that's not a coincidence, and that's not an accident. It's hard. It is really hard. Now, part of it are the obvious things that the league creates with the tougher schedule and lower draft picks and all that kind of stuff. That makes, and free agency, losing players. Obviously, teams that go to the Super Bowl, their coaching staff gets rated. So you have to kind of, in the modern era of football, if you go to the Super Bowl, you are faced with a fair amount of rebuilding the next year. That's part of it. And then the schedule gets tougher, and that makes it tougher still. But a big part of it, having interviewed guys that have been in that situation over decades, the thing that you hear them say over and over again is just emotionally, it is so tough. It just takes so much out of you to have fought your way all the way through a long season, then the playoffs, to get to the Super Bowl, and then to get there and lose. And then come back the next year and have to start all over again and just start that climb all over again. Guys say it's just emotionally, it just drains you. Now, some teams can overcome it, and some teams come back and they do succeed, but it's very hard. And that's the reality of it. And that's what each of these individual guys has to face. And that's what the whole coaching staff has to face, is that moment of standing at the bottom of the mountain and looking up and saying, oh boy, here we go again. And being able to pull that off over the course of a season, and a season in which everybody's painted a bullseye on you. The media attention is greater. The pressure is greater. Your fans' expectation is greater. That's a tough rock to push up that hill. And that's why some really, really good teams haven't been able to do it. I mean, the perfect example, and I remember this, was the Miami Dolphin team with Marino. You know, when Marino got there in his second year, setting all these records, looks like the best young quarterback that had come along in a generation. You know, they go out to Palo Alto and they lose to a great 49er team. Certainly no embarrassment there. And when it's over with, you know, I remember Marino coming into the press conference and saying, well, this is really disappointing, but, you know, we'll be back.
We'll be back, yeah.
And who doubted it? I mean,
nobody. We all thought he'd be there a bunch of times.
You know, and Shula's your coach, and you know, I mean, everybody said, "Oh yeah, they'll be back." Absolutely, they never got back.
No,
and so you know, that history will tell you that. So that's the challenge that this Eagles team faces this year.
Yeah, you mentioned, Ray, the rating of the coaching staff, and we've been through this in Philadelphia recently. If you look at Andy Reid's first coaching staff, it's legendary now. All the names that ultimately became head coaches, and Andy had a phenomenal run here, but as the attrition on the coaching staff continued, it got more difficult. It got more difficult to replace those guys. I remember sitting in the bar in Minneapolis after Super Bowl 52 saying, all right, Doug Peterson's got a lifetime dispensation card. I mean, he just won the Super Bowl for Philadelphia. Turns out that was 3 years. You know, losing Frank Reich, John DiFilippo right away, coming off the Super Bowl, that had a big impact. First time with Nick Sirianni, losing both coordinators. We've had some interesting feedback on that. Randy Mueller's a friend of the show, former NFL Executive of the Year, said it's a big deal. We've had some other people say, not that big of a deal. Where are you on that scale of really big issue? It's okay. Everything's fine.
You know, I don't know, John. I don't know, because I don't know that much about the two guys that are coming in. You know, I don't have a really good sense of, you know, a lot of times you lose one coach, but you hire another coach that's got a track record, or you have some kind of you've had some experience with him, or you've heard talk around the league about people saying, oh, this guy's a really good coach, and he's the guy who comes in, and you feel pretty confident that, okay, you know, they'll be fine. I really don't know that much about these two guys. I mean, I know Johnson was here last year, and the fact is he's worked with Jalen Hurts and has history with him going way back. And on its face, you would say that sounds okay, you know. And the new defensive coordinator, and we have a little bit of an idea of where he came from. He has a history with Vic Fangio and so forth. Okay, but let's see. You know, let us see. I mean, you're quite right in pointing out. I mean, one of the reasons why the Andy Reid team kind of went the way it went towards the end really was a big part of it. People really underestimate the attrition of the coaching staff and how big of an impact that had. I mean, you look at how good those guys were, and when they left, and Andy tried to do the loyal thing and promote from within and assist, promote his guys and give them that opportunity. But when you got John Harbaugh leaves and you replace him with Rory Seacrest, well, it's nice of you to give him that opportunity, but, looking at the quality of the two coaches, the special teams went from being the best to being the worst. Not a coincidence. So we'll see. I mean, everything that we have heard and everything that we've been told suggests that these guys are really good coaches. But with that transition there is a transition. And for both of these guys, it's taking on a big responsibility that's going to be under a great big microscope. And we'll just have to see how they handle it. But I will say this. I think Sirianni is a very good coach. I didn't know very much about him when he came here, but I've been very impressed with what he has done. And I have a feeling that he has a good handle on things. So, there's going to be some rough patches this year. And I don't think this season is going to be the easy, the smooth ride that everybody kind of thinks it's going to be. But he looks to me to be a guy that's really smart and I think has a pretty good handle on the situation. And whatever comes up, I think he'll be able to handle it.
Ray, I'm going to borrow one of my partner's favorite sayings that I like to borrow from time to time because it's dead on point. Nobody worries about stopping the run until they have to stop the run. And then if you didn't do a good enough job, it jumps up and bites in the butt. I'll suggest that it didn't bite the Eagles in the butt till the last game of the season when Isaiah Pacheco ran the ball as effectively as he did against the Eagles. And they only lost 3 games before that. And I would say none of those 3 losses were because the Eagles couldn't stop the run. But they were middle of the pack in stopping the run last year, even though they were the second-rated overall defense. That's one of my few concerns for this team coming into the season. Is this team going to be able to stop the run? Which means linebackers, edge guys, tackling runners, safeties, major changes in a couple of those positions. Are the Eagles going to be good enough stopping the run this year, Ray?
We'll find out. And I agree with you. If you can't stop the run, you can't win. I don't care what era you're playing in. If your defense isn't capable of stopping the other team from running the football, you can't win because they will run the ball. They will control the clock. They will control field position. The idea that, you don't have to worry about that anymore. That's nonsense. That's never been true, and it never will be true. They have to do that. And I think one of the reasons why I think people were a little misled about the strength of this team's run defense. Look at those numbers. Middle of the pack. No big deal. Well, yeah. if you have an offense that's as dynamic as this team's offense was last year, and you're breaking out to big leads every game, yeah, you can live that way. But are you going to be able to do that 2 years in a row? I don't know. I think a lot of the expectation. Look, I'm not at all concerned about the Eagles' offense. I think the Eagles' offense is going to be fine. But if you look at the makeup of this team right now, to me, you do have issues on the defense. You do have to replace some key players, and we're going to be asking a lot out of the Georgia Bulldogs here. They're going to in many ways tell the tale of this season. If they come in and if Jordan Davis can develop into the player that they drafted him to be, and Nakobe Dean can become anything close to the player he was at Georgia at linebacker, I think that they will be. Sidney Brown I really like him. I like him a lot. He was one of my favorite players in this draft. I saw him play and I thought he was really good. And when the Eagles drafted him, I was elated because I thought he was going to be one of those later in the draft kinds of guys that gets sort of overlooked because he's not the perfect size and he's not the perfect combine guy, but damn, he's a football player. And when you watched him play in college, you knew that. And I have a feeling he's going to come in. I think he's going to play right away, and I think he's going to play really well. And I have the same kind of feeling for Nakobe Dean. I saw him play a lot of football at Georgia. on part of a defense where, it was a blue chip defense head to tail. I mean, everybody on that field seems like he was a first-round draft pick, except for Nakobe Dean. But in the big games and in the big moments, the one thing you saw in that team was everybody on that field looked to him. I mean, all of these other guys that were drafted in the first round, all these guys that had better pedigrees, when the rubber met the road and a play had to be made, you saw every guy on that team looked at him. That told me a lot about what kind of player he is. So I know there's a lot of questions, and does he have things to prove? Yeah, he does, to prove it play at the NFL level. But I think he will. And I think he's going to come in, and I think he's going to play well right away. I mean, they need him to, frankly. I mean, it's not just, we're going to give him a chance to win the job. No, the fact of the matter is they need him to step in and be that kind of player. But based on what I saw him do in college, I think he will be.
To kind of further that, Ray, I've talked about Jordan Davis with Jody a lot, sort of an esoteric role in the fact that if you look at those Georgia highlights of Nakobe Dean, and you've seen plenty of them, a lot of them, the big guy up front is taking up blockers. And, the Eagles will tell you as we get to that run support conversation, the whole goal of the Vic Fangio defense is to have the extra guy. Everything's a math equation in modern professional sports, which is not fun, to be honest. But they want one less guy in the box, so they have one more guy in coverage to limit explosive plays. That's the whole theory behind the defense. Now, to make that work, Jordan Davis has got to eat up blockers and let Nakobe Dean run to the football. Let the Eagles play one less player in the box so they can stop the run. A, can he do it? And B, and this is the more important question, Ray, will he ever be regarded as worthy of being the 13th overall pick if he just does his job and he's Vita Bea or Haloti Ngata and he's not getting sacks? He's just making things easier for others.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. I don't think that's an issue, John. In terms of justifying where he was picked in the draft, if he comes in and does everything that you just said, which is really what you drafted him to be, then exactly right. Then he is one very big piece of a puzzle that is complete and ultimately will win you a championship. Then everybody justifies everything at that point. Everybody has done their job well enough to get you where you want to go. I never, when people said that they were disappointed in Davis last year, I think they kind of just misunderstood the kind of player that he is.
Yeah.
He's not Alan Page, and he's never going to be. He's not John Randall. That's not what he is. He is just a big, powerful guy who can control the line of scrimmage and shut the valve on the running game. That's really what he is. And you put him next to a defensive tackle who is more of a guy that's explosive in the gap and can get up the field. And that's exactly what you're looking for. And that's what they're going to hope that they get with he and Carter playing side by side. And, Carter is that up the field kind of behind the line of scrimmage guy. But I think Davis can certainly do his job. And I actually thought, I've had people say, he was a disappointment last year. I don't really feel that. I thought, he got off to a little bit of a slow start, but he was a rookie. He's kind of figuring it out. And then I thought he started to play well, and then he got hurt.
Yeah, he was playing really well before he got hurt.
I thought he was playing really good. And then he got the injury, he got the ankle injury, and he was out for a while. And then when he came back, he never quite got back to where he had been. But I thought once he kind of got a sense of the difference of even SEC football to NFL football, and he began to understand the spacing and the angles and the speed of the game, you saw his natural ability come, and he gained his confidence. And I thought for a stretch there before the ankle injury, I thought he was playing really good football. I was on his way, got hurt, had to come back. But I think he's going to be really good. I think Dean's going to be really good. Carter has a chance to be very good. There are a lot of people that will tell you that he may have been the best player in this entire draft.
That's me.
Yeah, he was really good, really, really good. And there are questions about him in other areas, which I kind of understand. But you just put on the tape and you just watch, and there's no question this guy's got outstanding ability. I mean, outstanding ability. I mean, it's rare to see a guy his size that's that explosive out of the stance and that's strong with his hands and smart. I mean, he's already knows how to use his hands, and he already understands principles of leverage. I mean, he was. I mean, to me, when I watched him play last year, he looked like an NFL player playing in college. I mean, he looked like an NFL player last year. So there's no reason to think he's going to be anything less than that in Philadelphia.
Ray Diddy, there aren't that many questions coming into the season for the Philadelphia Eagles. They're in a very good spot off the season that they had last year. And there was roster turnover certainly on the defense, but the offense stayed pretty much intact. They did lose, for me, one key piece, though. So that's a question coming into the season. Will the person who starts game one at right guard for the Philadelphia Eagles, assuming health, be the starter all 17 regular season games?
Good question, and I don't think it's been asked often enough. I mean, the right guard position. I mean, Sayamalo was a pretty good player.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, he didn't get, he's very overshadowed because he's playing next to an all-time great player in Kelsey. He's playing between two great players, in Kelsey and Johnson. And then you got Mailata, who's this great story at left tackle, and so everybody just kind of took Sayamalo for granted, which they shouldn't have done. I mean, he wasn't at that level, but he was a good, consistent player who didn't make mistakes, and he was a really good fit in that spot. Losing him is not a small loss, in my view. So he has to be replaced. I haven't talked to you guys about this. I have never, you call conventional wisdom was, we'll just move Juergens over there. Juergens will just play there. My reaction was, oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's that easy, huh? We're just going to take this center and we're just going to put him at right guard, and that's that. It'll be fine.
Come on, Ray. All I have to do is have Stoutland wave his magic wand, and it's done.
Yeah.
Did you miss that memo? Whatever Stoutland touches turns to gold.
I don't see it that way. Frankly, I don't think he's big enough.
Well, that's that if you think about it, Ray. For many years, it was Brandon Brooks next to Jason Kelsey, and Isaac's a pretty big player. It's not Brandon's size, but pretty big player himself. And the kind of thought process behind that was, well, you got to protect. As good as Kelsey is, there are some weaknesses, and one of the weaknesses is he's very undersized.
Yep.
And now you have undersized instead of the big, powerful Brandon Brooks or Isaac Sayamalo. I'm with you.
John, totally different players. Different players. And that's why, I kept reading these stories and hearing people say, Cam Juergens, we're just going to put him over there. And I'm saying, oh, yeah? It's that simple, huh? Listen, if they're, and I have all the respect in the world for Jeff Stoutland. He's as good an offensive line coach as I've ever seen. And so I've seen him make ordinary players into better players. But you got to have the frame to start with. And to me, if that's your idea, you're going to put Juergens in there. You're going to be playing with two centers in the middle of your offensive line. I don't think you can do that. I think that's why they drafted Tyler Steen. Now everybody talks about, he's a third day pick. You're not a whole lot of expectation. I think internally they're looking at him with the idea that he's going to get a real shot to win that job because he does have the frame to protect Kelsey on that side, and you need that. You need that other guy because you're right. I mean, Kelsey is a great player, absolutely a great player, but he has certain limitations, and he needs protection on either side of him to do the things that he does so well. I don't think Juergens offers that. Steen may be. I mean, he's big enough and he's strong enough. And he's got the power. He's not going to be Brooks. I mean, Brooks to me was a really, really good player. I mean, even Sayamalo wasn't as good as Brooks, but he was big enough and he was smart enough and physical enough that he could do the things that you needed your right guard to do. I think Juergens will be a fine center at some point, but just saying, he's going to play right guard, I don't see it. I'd be willing to bet you guys right now that when they start the season, Steen's going to be your right guard.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, Ray, that's the plan. that's the long-term plan, is for Cam Jurgens to be the center when Jason finally decides to retire, and Tyler Steen to be the right guard. That's the long-term plan. So if you can get to Tyler Steen as quickly as possible at right guard, why won't you do that? But to your point about Stout, look, he's great. He's the best offensive line coach in the NFL. Let's use Isaac as an example. Very good player. It took a while. You got to develop, and Isaac was a third-round pick, just like Tyler Steen. It took him a while to develop into the player he was, and I think that's going to be the case with Tyler Steen. So I'm with you there. I one last one from me.
By the way, just as an aside here, while we're talking about the right guard position, I would not be so quick to dismiss Jack Driscoll either. I think that I've seen Driscoll play well enough now that I think if he's given a fair opportunity to win that job, he could be competitive there too. I would sooner have him playing right guard than I would Jurgens, because I've seen the one problem that Driscoll had when he came up was I thought he just needed to get bigger and stronger, which he has done. I mean, if you saw him last year, I mean, he's significantly bigger than he was before. So, I think he could be more of a physical match for the right guard position than Jurgens. I mean, most people aren't even talking about Driscoll.
No. You know why I brought up Driscoll?
He's kind of your utility backup guy. But, I think given the opportunity, wouldn't shock me if he could win that job.
I agree with you. Week one, if you ask me who's likely to be the best player, just the best player of those three, it's probably going to be Jack Driscoll because he's the most ready. But then you impact, as you mentioned, Ray, the utility guy. He's the sixth man. He's got to be the swing tackle. You don't have Andre Dillard, so he's got to back up right tackle and left tackle. And who knows? He might be the top backup at every position but center. If you put him in the starting lineup, then you start talking about moving parts. Stoutland hates that. If you got to move guys in game, move them more than one position. So that's my concern with Jack Driscoll. But I agree with you. He's probably the most ready to play right guard, and he did it, and he did it pretty successfully.
I think he's pretty good. I think he's pretty good. And nobody's even mentioning him. They just kind of in their mind he's kind of the swing guy. He's the backup guy. I think he's better than that. And if need be, I think he's a guy that could step in there and play that position and play it pretty good. Yeah.
His flexibility is his own worst enemy. I think that's going to end up costing him the fact that he is the number one backup at several different offensive line positions. All right, Ray, last one from me. We're predicting. That's what you do here as members of the media. When we get to, let's say, late January, as an NFC championship game, if the Eagles are in it, hopefully hosting it, who's going to be the opponent? Who's the number one challenger to the Eagles if they're the favorite? And they are, at least in the wagering markets and in a lot of people's minds, the favorite to go back to the Super Bowl again. Who's their biggest competition in the NFC?
I would probably say the next best team is still San Francisco. But, I mean, who's their quarterback? I don't know. But they're very good. They're very good across both lines. Their defense, they're good. They're really good. If you were to ask me right now, I would probably say San Francisco. I don't know I couldn't tell you who their quarterback's going to be, but the rest of that team is really good.
All right, so let me push on this one. Assuming health, which is a big assumption at this point, how good is Brock Purdy going to be this year? Is something we talk about a lot on this particular show because I happen to be a very big fan and thought he wasn't given enough credit for what he did last year. And then San Francisco throws fuel on the fire and says, oh, if Purdy were here, we would have won the game. No, you could have won the game. Don't give me, we would have won the game. I'm a Purdy guy. Do you think he's got a chance to be a top-flight NFL quarterback?
Top flight meaning, how do you define that?
Top 5, NFC. Top 10, well, because the AFC is so stockpiled, top 5 in the NFC isn't that big a deal. Top 10 quarterback in the NFL overall.
I don't think it's top 10 is probably stretching it, but I'll say this. I liked him too coming out of college. The only knock on him really was his arm strength. But he's very smart guy, and he's extremely accurate. And that was one of the reasons why I thought he got way underdrafted. I mean, everybody makes a big deal out of being the last pick in the draft, which he was. Right. But I mean, I really do feel that sometimes the talent evaluators and the scouts in the NFL just they still, as much as they say they don't overrate things, they do overrate things. And to me, arm strength in the NFL, it's nice to have. It's great to have. I'll take a strong arm quarterback for sure. But you don't win games in the NFL week in and week out by throwing 70-yard passes.
You might throw 2 a year. Aaron Rodgers might throw 2 a year. Who cares? Can you make NFL throws?
You win with accuracy, and you win with accuracy. You win with timing. You win with judgment. And guys that have that, they can win if you put the right people around them. And Purdy is that kind of guy. I think he's in the perfect situation. You put him on a bad team, then it's just going to expose the things he can't do. Right. But you put him on a really good team where he is, and just let him play his game, and he can win for you, which he demonstrated last year. Yeah, I mean, I think that he can be the guy for that team, and that's why I said right now, if you were to ask me who's going to be their opponent in the championship game, I think it's very likely to be a rematch. I think it's likely to be the Niners.
Yeah.
So as do I. Ray Diddy, it is a pleasure to have you on. Now that we know that you're good to get set up and put the Emmys behind you and be able to hop in with us. Yeah. Oh, since you're so retired, from both radio and television and writing, you got downtime. You can hop on with Mac here on Birds 365.
And it's beach season. One more time. One last read out in paperback, new afterward by Ray Didinger.
Yeah, they asked me to write like a final chapter, add to the book about last year, about my decision to, as Jody laughingly refers to it, and then all the things that happened in Philadelphia last year with the World Series and the Super Bowl. It felt like, we really kind of have to address that, don't we? So I wrote a final chapter that kind of covers that ground.
Well, nice. Hopefully they ask you to do another final chapter again next year after the Phillies and the Eagles have another successful postseason run in both of them. Ray Diddy, always a pleasure, brother. Thank you very much for doing this. We will be in touch.
All right. You know where to find me.
That is
Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.
All-time great Ray Didinger here with us on Birds 365. And I love what he said about Purdy. The question was his arm strength. Johnny Mac, you know this. I know this. I get more of a hands-on Eagles feel. And we're just talking about fans, not scouts and other teams. You know whose arm strength was questioned? After he replaced Carson Wentz as the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, that would be Jalen Hurts. Well, he doesn't have a strong enough arm. Carson Wentz has a stronger arm than Jalen Hurts. We're going to go backwards with Carson. Oh, yeah. You know how many of those calls I fielded, Johnny Mac? That why we wasted a second-round pick. He doesn't have the arm strength to play in the NFL. You can improve your arm strength. You can put effort in. You can get better at it. Jalen Hurts did it. Would not be surprised if Brock Purdy did it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Nick Sirianni a lot about arm strength. And, it's similar to what I said. I was talking about receivers. You have to have a certain baseline. Once you hit that baseline, you're good to go. It doesn't matter. Like Ray said, look, it's nice when you have to throw a Hail Mary and you have Aaron Rodgers and you can get it there from 70 yards away in his prime. It's nice. But remember, you don't want to be in that position. So you never want to be in that position. It doesn't come up enough to worry about. The key two aspects are decision-making and accuracy.
Yep.
And those are the two, and Nick judges for. The third one would be, movement skills, to be able to do stuff off schedule. Obviously, Jalen's tremendous at that. And then the fourth is arm strength. And all you got to hit is the baseline. He hits the baseline. He can make every NFL throw. It's so overrated. Once you hit it, it's like when we're talking about receivers. Do you have to run a 4.29 to be a receiver in this league? I got to cover Chris Carter for years. He's in the Hall of Fame. He hit the baseline, and he did everything else spectacularly. Yeah, people don't get it.
No, they put too much of an emphasis on. And the thing that annoyed me about Jalen Hurts was people said he didn't have the arm strength and he wasn't accurate enough. Because you go back and you check the numbers, his percentage completion the year he filled in for Carson Wentz wasn't good. Oh, then he's going to be that type of quarterback for the rest of his life. Because in 4 games replacing Carson Wentz, that was his. Forget the fact that the Eagles' offensive line was injured. Forget the fact that their wide receiver core was certainly able to be upgraded. Oh, no, that's going to be his completion percentage for the rest of his career. Of course, there's chance for improvement. And we saw it with Jalen Hurts to his almost MVP season this past year. All right, McMullen and McDonald, we are Mac and Mac here on Bird Street 65. Quickie timeout. We got another good guest coming up in hour number 2. Stay right there.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Yeah, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you, Mac and Mac on Birds 365. We appreciate Ray Didinger jumping in. Certainly someone who knows and has chronicled the long-time National Football League. Oh, we got another one joining us in just a couple of minutes. Bob Angelo, cinematographer for NFL Films. He only did it for 43 years. He's like a spring chicken. Dinger, 53. Bob Angelo, only
Yeah,
43.
A lot of experience. We have a lot of experience, and we're paling in comparison today.
We're wet behind the ears kids compared to
Yeah.
the couple of guests we're punching up. So Bob Angelo is going to join us coming up in less than 15 minutes now. Before we get to Bob,
Bob's already here in the green room. Should we go to Bob? What should we do, Zander? He's already here. He's here early. Yeah, he's ready to go. Let's go.
You want to do Bob right away?
Why not? Why
we
not?
can punch up Bob.
I don't want to make him wait.
Then there
There
you
he
go.
is.
Hello, Bob Angelo, cinematographer for NFL Films. So he's got a new book out that everyone should be looking into if you're any kind of an NFL fan. Bob, thank you much for jumping in with us here today. I just gave Dinger a hard time because he says he's retired, but all he continues to do is hop on TV, hop on radio, write forwards to books and the like. How are you handling retirement?
Retirement is wonderful. The day that they forced a lot of us out of NFL Films, the CEO said, "Would you like to come back and work as a network cinematographer on weekends?" And I said, "No, I'm done. I've shot my last game." The Eagles Super Bowl was the victory over the Patriots, was the last football game I shot. Why not go out on a high note?
Yeah.
And,
Go out on top. Billy Special.
65
Yeah,
years
the whole
old,
9
and
yards. Yeah.
It hurts to shoot a camera on Sundays.
Now, you know, Ray was showing off. I think he had 5 Emmys in his background. You only got 1 in your background there, Bob. And by the way, the book, The NFL Off Camera, an A to Z guide to the league's most memorable players and personalities. You got it in back of you there as well. How many Emmys do you have total?
21.
21.
Only
21, Jody
You
Mack.
slacker, Bob Angelo. How dare you not get that 20-second? Shame on
21. That's unbelievable.
I really hoped to get more than that, but I'm proud.
Well, how
of
many do you have room for, Bob? I mean, you got
You're
to build
building
a
a new
house.
wing to the house to house all those Emmys?
I've only got 3 here. I've given 3 to my neighbor, actually 4 to my neighbors and friends. I gave 1 to my parents, and I never got that one back. One got broken, and then the rest are on the walls on the shelves at NFL Films.
Nice.
That's very nice.
Yeah, 21 is pretty impressive. But I always joke, you know, as a reporter, you know, I get access to the locker room and the coach and even off the record sessions. But everything, even for people like me, everything has a little bit of a filter because guys know why we're there. You NFL Films guys, you're on the field, you're getting that raw sort of emotion in the moments, seeing at the most, could be the most exhilarating time for a player, could be a terrible time for a player. Just kind of take us into that sort of, you know, mentality and the fact that you're so close to that particular action, whether it's winning, losing, and everything in between.
And in proximity, I was even closer because I was shooting sound. And in shooting sound, excuse me, I'm not just observing action. I'm not just getting close-ups. I'm hearing what they're saying to one another, to their position coaches, to their head coaches. Pre-game, lots of times these guys have been sitting on it all week. I walk into their presence with a wide angle lens on my camera, literally put it within a foot of their faces and say, "What's up?" or "What to do today?" or, you know, anything to get them speaking. It's bottled up. They want to say it. They want to get it out. They're done practicing. They're getting ready. They're warming up. And you'd be surprised some of the things that have come out of players.
Yeah.
In those,
But by the way, if you're comfortable with it, only if you're comfortable with it, I want you to give the Connor Barwin story because I saw because we're allowed to do that on this outlet. You know, the radio, you probably couldn't say that, but
the Connor Barwin story. I'd rather not get to the punch because I really respect Connor, but boy, did he pull a prank. I mean, an incredible prank on me that day. And when I learned about, you know, his precondition, the fact that he was semi-deaf in one ear, I understood his awareness of cameras and microphones. And when he saw the boom microphone, he just played me like a yo-yo. I mean, he way with me. And it was one of the best sound bites I've ever gotten that will never see the light of day.
Yeah. Connor is a great guy. He would not care, by the way. He would not care.
Well, I hope not, because I didn't run it by him first before I put it in the book, but it just got me. And I looked at him and he looked at me, and that smile said it all. Like, oh man, did I punk you? And then later on, he did it again with another defensive lineman who saw the microphone and was, and Connor just went right into it again. And I thought, wow, that's stage presence. Stage presence.
Now, Bob, you started at NFL Films many years ago, and at the time,
leather helmets were in.
You were it. That was it. That was the only access that NFL fans had to NFL players. There wasn't today's modern technology where, let's be honest, you go into a football stadium, there's 60,000 video recorders there. Everybody's got one on their phone. Everyone has a camera and a video recorder with them in their back pocket. So you're kind of sharing it with everybody now. Now you've got the best technology and you're the closest and you're right on top of those guys. So you don't fall out of the picture. But how did you adapt? Knowing that others were doing when you started it, you were it. You were the only one. And now you're the top one, but one of 60,000. Did it change your job at all?
Well, it did in a way, but most of those people were not allowed behind the bench area for more than a few seconds. Network cameras and NFL Films cameras were the only two cameras allowed behind bench areas. Now, local television guys with connections with teams who had been around for many years, many NFL teams would just ignore them because they would see these people every day.
Yeah.
And they would have access, but generally I would just walk in, and if I needed to, I would strong arm my way into the position that I needed. And I would just point at my credential and say, I'm good back here. And players over the years became more sophisticated when it came to, oh, that's NFL Films. They're cool. We can be ourselves around them. Some teams never get it because the head coach sets the tone and players look at us as, you're the enemy. You're trying to steal our hearts, our souls. You're trying to take away our winning edge. Well, that's a pile of crap. However, it pervades the NFL, and it lasts to this day. There are still teams that don't want us around. I get it, but I don't. Come on, we're all on the same team here. The commissioner is my boss too, so allow us here. We're not going to put things on the air that are going to give away strategic secrets. Everybody runs the same plays. Everybody runs the same pass protections, the same coverages, the same defenses, the same blitz schemes. Everybody does the same stuff. Some teams do it better on a consistent basis. They go to playoff games and Super Bowls. You guys who are bitching about me being back here with a camera, overhearing what the quarterback is saying to you because you blew a protection and he just wound up on his ass. Am I allowed to say this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can say.
I want to hear that. I want to hear Ben tearing you a new one. And Ben get to a point, Roethlisberger, where he would just say, all right, I can outweigh you guys. Okay. I would step off to the side, swing around, try to hang the boom in where Ben couldn't see it. Ben could see it. I mean, they're not dumb. So if they don't want you around, there's not a lot we can do about it if they're going to clam up. And but being there, hearing what's going on, hearing the adjustments. I mean, I didn't get this particular soundbite I'm about to describe, but a poor defensive back was sitting there after he got toasted on a double move touchdown, and he's sitting there and his coach is tearing him a new one. And when he walked away, his observation was, hey, they get paid too. That pretty much sums it up. We're all professionals here. Talking about the guy who beat him. Now, he might go out, shut him down the next 9 times, but the point of the drill is they're professionals too. They're professional football players. Excuse me. They came from the same colleges that we did. They came up the same way with the same aspirations and dreams.
Now, when you're telling that story, Bob, you would think over the years that NFL Films has developed into what it has developed into, it would have eased I think today it's worse than ever when you're talking about that sentiment of teams. Hard Knocks. You were on the ground floor of Hard Knocks. Nobody
didn't
wants
invent it, but I
no,
pretty
but you were, yeah.
I developed.
Nobody wants to be on the show because these guys are so secretive and you're right, they all run the same stuff. You're not protecting state secrets. Why do you think that is, that they haven't developed some kind of trust for what you guys have done over the years?
Again, it comes down, excuse me, it comes down to the head coach. If the head coach identifies television crews, as distractions, then they're distractions. And it's hard, even for veteran players, to dismiss that. And a lot of veteran players will say, well, that's the excuse I needed not to talk to you folks or be myself around you. Hard Knocks is a different animal. It's very invasive. The very first Hard Knocks back in 2001, when Steve Sable called me into his office and said, Ange, I've got a show for you. You're going to be gone all summer. You're going to be with the Baltimore Ravens. I said, okay, this is going to be good. He said, do you know Brian Billick? I said, very well. I mean, Brian embraced it because Brian had his team, his Super Bowl championship team in Baltimore.
Yeah.
He wanted the attention. He wanted the publicity. The Ravens were craving, a national sort of recognition that they didn't get even when they won the Super Bowl because of, some off-field things that were going on with some of their players. Bottom line, Brian embraced it. Day one, we had robotic cameras in his office, and he said, look at this. He stood up and he moved around the room and he said, look at these cameras. They're following me. This is how our camp is going to be this year, just like this. And our players are going to be ready to defend their Super Bowl title, because if they can put up with all of this, then, on Sunday when they line up opposite an opponent and you know what he wants to do to you, and vice versa, it's going to be a lot easier to focus, because this is what they're going to go through all summer. Cameras everywhere, in meeting rooms, every place but the medical room. That was the only room that my crews were not allowed to go to. And I understood that, and it never came up. And I remember Steve Sable was very concerned about profanity in the show. He was concerned, and because he felt the NFL office would be concerned. Well, I said, Steve, this is a training camp. You're going to have profanity almost every other word. Every seventh word is going to begin with F.
Yes, I can confirm that.
And so there we were shooting, and every Wednesday morning, we would screen the rough cut prior to the Wednesday night screening of Hard Knocks. And the entire brain trust, everybody of importance with the Ravens was there, both Modells, Brian Billick, PR executives, et cetera, right on down the line. And after the first show, they said nothing. After the second show, before the second show, Steve Sable made a deliberate effort with his producing staff. Make sure you limit the profanity. Let's take the profanity out of the show. Let's try to avoid it. The league office hadn't said anything about it, but Steve was concerned about it. After screening the second show, Brian got up and said, great show, Bob, but we need a few more gratuitous F words in there. Well, from that moment on, NFL Films and Steve Sable had no concerns about the profanity.
Very, very nice. If he got it, if Billick got it, that there was an upside to this, that you're on a national platform. And when Hard Knocks started, I don't know if we're using the word platform yet, but it has become such a buzzword, we have to use it now. If he understood that, why don't they have a Hard Knocks team named yet this year? John pointed out, he's right. It seems like none of the 32 teams want to do it. The NFL put rules in place that you could be eliminated for consideration if you did this, that, and the other thing. Well, the only teams that are like we can force you to do this thing is 4 out of the 32, and the 4 don't want any part of it. Why didn't anybody get it that this can be a good thing for your organization if you're branding, another 2023 word, if you're branding your organization? Why wouldn't they want to be on Hard Knocks?
I think it's because it's not new anymore. And Robert Saleh with the Jets knows what's going to happen. If and when the Jets are picked above objection to be the participant this year. And Robert Saleh's looking at his team thinking, I've got this quarterback who has a history of, not necessarily being nice around cameras that are trying to get sound bites. And I've had experiences with Aaron where, he would just push the camera out of the way once. And Mike McCarthy said, what are you doing? And I don't want that here. And okay. And okay, we at that point see who's running that situation. And I like Mike, but his quarterback doesn't want the camera around.
Yeah.
Well, now Aaron's in New York, and Robert Saleh's got a pretty damn good defensive team, I think. I don't know that they are as close to a championship as New York Jets fans want to believe, but they look pretty darn balanced. And you plug in this quarterback, if he's got anything left, and chances are he does, because he's the most accurate passer I think I've ever seen.
Yep.
If he wants to play, and if the hallucinogenic drugs he's using are giving him insights into how to find secondary and tertiary receivers, then the Jets are going to have a shot.
Right.
Yeah.
I think again, distractions. Robert has never been around anything of this. Is that his name? Robert Saleh, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, he's never been around anything this invasive, and it is invasive because the cameras are there. They don't go home at night. The cameras live in the facility. And, when they transition from camp to their stadium setup or their facility setup, I don't even know if the Jets do that. But the cameras remain there. The people remain there every day. And I don't know. I don't understand. I think it's just inexperience. I think some people who've been through it know that, hey, I can survive this. We can live through this. We can actually use it to our betterment. But the ones who've never experienced it and have watched others, I've heard coaches say, I can't imagine why anybody would let this happen.
Yeah. It seems like the younger ones, Bob, don't want any part of it, whether they don't have confidence in themselves or they don't have full confidence in their hold over the organization. I specifically see it with younger coaches. Now, one guy is always who I love as a coach, and he kind of doubled down on what I think of Bill Parcells. He didn't want the cameras around either, and he's as entrenched as it could be. Your interactions with Bill Parcells and the fact that he's going to take advantage if he can take advantage.
Bill was difficult. One of our cameramen had a famous run-in with him, and Bill could be very intimidating. There was nothing subtle about his approach. Get that camera out of here. And he would say it with conviction and flames in his eyes. And Bill looked like the kind of guy who would step off the sideline and come over and punch out a cameraman who was violating his space. I'm not sure where Bill learned that. Maybe Howard Schnellenberger, maybe one of those people in his past where this is your sacred space and don't allow anybody in it. I did come to understand Bill a little bit later when he explained about the sanctity of the locker room and how he didn't want communists, as he called them.
Oh,
he didn't want.
He called you a commie?
Well, no, he called somebody who asked him a question after he'd won a game, a reporter. He said, there you have it, a communist, right here, and
man.
Bill always felt that, okay, if you're in our locker room, if you're in our space, you should be part of our team. And that's not the job of the
No, it's not the job.
So Bill never got that. But when Bill became a general manager, I got stuck one day going into the Dolphin locker room. And I'm not sure how this played out, but I think Bill was a GM there for a while. Do I have this right?
Yeah, he was. I don't know if that was his title, but he was president.
Might have been
he was
president.
in charge. He was in charge. So,
and there I was in a post-game locker room, and he walked in, and I'm just sitting there holding my camera, thinking, "All right, here it comes." He's going to grab the back of my hair, and throw me out of here, and we're going to have a physical confrontation. And none of it happened. He just looked at me, walked on. he finally accepted the fact that people are going to be in post-game locker rooms and by right now, because the broadcast committee of the National Football League years ago opened up the locker rooms to NFL films and post games. Now, we still in many cities have to check with the PR person, and lots of times the media relations executive would wait a while before letting us in, didn't want us in there for the immediacy, that's what I was always there to get, that immediacy. When the team has won the game, they've achieved their objective, and everything is supposed to be good. And that is a jubilant moment in most locker rooms.
Yeah.
But lots of teams would still make us wait until that moment was over to come in.
Bob,
Executive Vice President of Football Operations. That's
okay. So he
for the Dolphins.
He was a honcho. He was and he could have, tapped me on the shoulder. And, given me the. And what am I going to say? I'm sitting here holding a camera, which kind of looks like a weapon. I don't want to ram the lens into his face. So but it goes on. It persists. It's not going to change anytime soon, I don't think, until teams start getting fined for doing it. You don't let our camera into the locker room in a timely fashion, you're going to pay a substantial fine every week. Will that ever happen? Probably not.
We shall see. All right, I got a personal question for you.
Sure.
Because of something you said when we introduced you. You said walked away after the Eagles Super Bowl and ending on a high note. You're a Pittsburgh guy. You were born in Pittsburgh. You went to high school in Pittsburgh. There were some pretty good teams in Pittsburgh when you were a younger man, if I remember correctly.
When I was growing up in the 1960s, the Steelers stunk.
Okay.
I graduated in 1970. Now, they had started drafting people. In 69, they brought in this big defensive lineman named Joe Green from North Texas State. And that went on for about 6 years in a row, where every single season, the Steelers added future Hall of Famers to their roster. By the time I was a sophomore at Penn State was, Pittsburgh, the Steelers were getting pretty good. I actually had to drive up to my college apartment at State College to watch the Immaculate Reception because we couldn't get it because of the blackout in Pittsburgh. And I drove my neighbor up, who was a Penn Stater as well, and he jumped up and down on my roommate's bed and broke the frame. And Franco ran it in. True story. And but the Steelers stunk. But then all of a sudden, beginning in 72 until the end of the decade, 4 Super Bowls in 6 seasons, I don't know that will ever be duplicated. But during my professional life, I got very close to the Minnesota Vikings and I did the last 25 years of their highlight films and went to Japan with them, went to Mankato with them, went to England with them. And, and of course, now I lived in the Philadelphia area. So I got to know Andy Reid, and I liked Andy. I liked Dick Vermeil a lot. These were good men, good people, and they ran great programs. So people would say, well, who are your favorite? What's your favorite team? Well, I have favorite teams. And in most cases, professionally, it's who would allow me the most access.
Yeah.
The coaches who would allow me the most access became my favorite teams. And that was Denny Green and, future coaches in Minnesota.
Denny was great.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just tremendous guy. Dick Vermeil and then Andy Reid and, subsequent generations of Eagles coaches here. And then my Pittsburgh teams. I mean, I always got along fairly well with Mike Tomlin. He never really ran me out of there. I'd have issues with Ben Roethlisberger and some assistant coaches occasionally, but Mike and he would look at the camera, and Mike knew how to play that camera.
Yeah.
And he knew how to. So answer to the question, I'm here in Philly now. And I've, I'm
an Eagle fan. The reason I ask is because I went through it. I'm a former New Yorker, but I've been in Philadelphia 33 years now. But some people still hold it against me because I wasn't born here. It wasn't a hospital delivery of Jody McDonald. So you're not a true Philadelphian.
You're not a true Philadelphian.
Sounded to me like you were a true Philadelphian. You go end on a high note with an Eagles Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
You got your colors as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I got to know Doug Peterson because Doug was one of Andy's key assistants for many years. And when Doug came here, I knew Doug when he was a backup quarterback to Brett Favre in Green Bay. So I was in a meeting once with him and Holmgren and Favre, and they're going over the first 20 play calls, which was, a kind of a thing that West Coast offenses do all the time. But I knew Doug. I actually was on my golf course one day, and this great, big, tall, lanky kid was on the range, and I was going from 9 to 10, and he was walking toward 10. So I sped up my golf cart because I really didn't want to play with anybody that day. And then I looked at him. I said, "You want to throw your bag on?" And sure. So he hits his drive after I hit mine. I said, "Did you get it all?" He goes, Yeah, I did. We get down there. I hit mine about 220, 225. I was feeling pretty proud of that. This guy hit his drive about 290 yards. Turns out it was Josh Peterson. It was Doug's son.
Wow.
So that became a talking point for me with Doug every time I would see him. I'd say, "I played golf with your son. He's playing a different sport than I am."
Yeah.
I mean, he outdrove
Josh just signed with the Jags, by the way.
I saw that. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for him because he could have been a professional golfer. This was when he was a freshman.
290. I'm impressed.
Oh,
now here's my question, Bob, because I used to cover the Vikings. You ever get a ticket going down 169 to get to
No. I avoided the tight ends booze joint there because too many people got arrested
every
there.
year. Some Viking player would get a ticket racing down to Mankato because they would wait till the last minute for training camp to check into Gage Hall. Nobody wanted to be there, and they would all race down 169 going 100 every year.
I hear you. I went there quite a few times, never had a problem there, but I was more concerned about the former tight ends place where they would all go on Wednesday night after practice and get loaded, and then invariably a Viking would
Joe
get
Sensor,
Joe Sensor. I actually convinced
Westchester's own, by the way, locally, Westchester University.
I convinced Peter King to do stand-ups once at Joe Sensor's bar.
Really?
Yeah, we of course had.
I like Peter. I respect Peter. I'm a guy who reads his column first day, soon as it's up, boom, up. Peter King funny? No. I would never believe that. You tell me he killed it doing stand-up. I got to see the film. You had to record it, Mr. Cinematographer. You got to produce that film for me. I refuse to believe Peter King funny.
Well, I did it for another producer, and he wasn't that funny. He did his stand-ups very straight, but as it turns out, I forgot all about the alcohol in the shot concept. And 3 of the 6 that we shot, we weren't allowed to use because we didn't want to put, the kegs of beer in the and the pitchers of beer. No, Peter did not. I don't think Peter indulged at all. I did while I was working, but
Peter indulging, that we know because every single week his column's got some kind of new beer, new IPA, something he likes to drink. So we know he indulges. I just don't see him as a funny guy.
No, well, his job was not to be funny. His job was to get through the copy and set up the segment and then do a tag for the end. But
all right, very good. The name of the book is NFL Off Camera with our friend Bob Angelo. Here's the question I want to wrap up on.
All righty.
And I don't know if you've ever thought of this before. I'm sure if I give you a second, you'll think of it. It'll come to you like that. You filmed thousands of hours of NFL action on the field, right there, right on top of it, getting the point of view from the players with your live mic as well. But what play did you film that you couldn't believe as you looked through the lens actually transpired? You go, whoa. Rewind. I got to see this again. I don't believe what my eye just saw through the lens of my camera. That didn't actually happen in reality. And then you went back and looked, damn,
well,
it did. Yeah,
I will give you a handful.
Okay.
The very first time I was in Tyreek Hill's presence when he was a rookie, he caught a bubble screen right in front of me and I was shooting action and he ran right out of my frame. And
you couldn't keep up with him.
And Joe Delaney once did that to me, but he was right in front of me and all of a sudden he was gone and I had to catch up with him. I immediately walked over to the bench and said, I need a flip card. And someone said, why? I said, who was that guy who just caught that pass? It was, he's fast, isn't he? I said, oh my goodness. That's one. I was shooting the playoff game between the Giants and the 49ers in San Francisco when Joe Montana was quarterbacking the 49ers against, I want to say not even Jim Kelly that year. I think Kelly got hurt and wasn't available, so he was against the backup. But I could be wrong about that, but I know it was the I'm sorry, it was 49ers Giants. What am I thinking?
Giants.
49ers Giants. It might have been the backup quarterback, not
Sims,
but
Hostetler?
West Virginia. Yeah, Hostetler. And it looked as if the 49ers were going to walk away with a win. So Montana drops this throw in the fourth quarter, and I'm shooting him, and I see Bubba Paris blow his block on Leonard Marshall. And Leonard Marshall arrived and hit Montana so hard that it almost took my breath away watching it. You could hear the air come out of the stadium. And I just stayed right there because I knew he's not moving. And he just sat there and sat there and sat there. And I think he missed 18 months of football after that. But I've never seen a hit like that in my life. It's the most violent collision I've ever seen. Wow. And I've been around, for a long time.
Yeah.
I saw Lambert and Jack Tatum and Ray Lewis, and that was the most violent hit I've ever seen. And that shot has been used so many times. As for I shot one game-winning play. It didn't turn out to be as big as the Immaculate Reception, but the Colts had a bouncing ball touchdown in Indianapolis once. But the plays I just mentioned are the two that really come to mind, because people who are watching Tyreek Hill or people of that stature on television don't understand how fast these guys are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then people who, again, see the sanitized view from, camera 1, 2, or 3 up high, don't understand what that hit felt like. I could hear that from where I was. And the crowd, the air just got sucked out of Candlestick Park. And, but Joe came back and played again for the 49ers and wound up playing in Kansas City and extended his Hall of Fame career. But those shots come to mind immediately. Yeah.
All right, let's end it on the Philly special, Bob. I think we had Ray on. I should have asked Ray. I think Ray's son caught the actual Nick Foles, Doug Peterson interaction with Philly, which is weird. But
he was probably the wire cam.
Yeah, the wire cam
on the quarterback or on the head coach. I was standing right behind them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can find that image anywhere, I was standing right behind them, and it wasn't my job to shoot him at the time. So, and I'm standing there with my sound man, and I turned to him, I said, "What do you think this is going to be?" And and of course it got hailed as the most incredible play call in the history of pro football. Well, let me tell you this, that was the easiest play call in the history of pro football, because you can bet your life that Belichick looked through 3 years of Eagles red zone and knew every single play that the Eagles might run in that situation. They sure as hell didn't know that one.
I've never seen that one on tape before. Exactly.
And so, that was simple. And the fact that Doug called it, though, on 4th and 1 rather than taking the points told me we're here to win this game. We're not just here to put on a good show. We're not just here to, advance our growth as a team. We're here to win this damn game. So let's win it. And I love that.
Yeah.
The name of his book is NFL Off Camera, collection of short stories that Bob gathered over the decades that he was on NFL sidelines. I am sure that it is a phenomenal read. Bob, we want to appreciate you jumping on with us for a couple minutes here today. Since you retired, we may call on you from time to time. Go, hey, Bob, did you watch this? How would you have shot this game? We may hit you up during the season. Thank you very much.
Feel free. I mean, I watch Red Zone every week for 7.5 hours.
Yeah. Here's one thing, and we're talking to 3 relatively older gentlemen right here. I couldn't host Red Zone. What do you got to do? Wear Depends? He's never off camera. There are no commercial breaks on Red Zone. At least here on Birds 365, I got 2.5 minutes to run upstairs if I got to go. That's one of the best things.
Scott Hansen, baby. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking they have him hooked up like an astronaut so he can go right into his.
Could be. Bob, great stuff. Thank you very much for jumping on with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
Bob
Bob.
Angelo, longtime cinematographer for NFL films. His book is NFL Off Camera. Pretty good title, as a matter of fact, for the collection of short stories that he tells about those many years of experience at NFL films. All right, McMullen, McDonald coming back. We still got a couple of segments. Keep it here on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac back here on Birds 365. I hope you enjoyed the show today. I did. Our two guests were both great, and they've been around the game forever, and they shared some great stories with us. And not hard-hitting 2023 upcoming season news, but I thought they were both great, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, just hanging out here and being able to shoot the breeze with these guys. Let me play off something that Bob Angelo talked about, John. You brought it up. The fact that he was the first cinematographer for Hard Knocks, and that he worked with Brian Billick season one. I remember it like it was yesterday, even though it was more than 20 years ago when the Ravens first did it. And he gave us a great feel of the way that Brian Billick handled it and accepted it and wanted to do it and saw it as an opportunity to get coverage for his team and what they were building, what they were doing down there in Baltimore. It's like the plague. No one wants any part of it this year, John. They usually announce the Hard Knocks team shortly after the Super Bowl. Sometime in March, they come out with, long before the NFL draft, long before OTAs, and certainly before camps open up, which in some cities is a week from now. The Eagles are going to be a week after that, and they still haven't named the Hard Knock team. What the hell is wrong with the NFL? Why do they not see what Bob Angelo was talking about, what Brian Billick was talking about, and what Jody McDonald was talking about? It's an opportunity to and
Coaches,
taking
man.
it into 2023. Brand management. Get it out there on the biggest platform, HBO. You've got a chance to win people over. Why are the NFL teams so reticent this year?
Coaches, like Bob said, and it's their domain. Like if you ask Don Smolensky, who's the Eagles president and pretty much runs the business side of the organization, he'd probably agree with you. But the coach doesn't want it. And if the coach doesn't want it, you don't want to upset the coach. That's ultimately the product on the field. And that's where everybody is. And, Bob brought up Billick, as you mentioned. I mean, I know Brian pretty well. He was Denny Green's offensive coordinator before he became a head coach. Even going back to that era, 2000, 2001, whatever it was, when Baltimore won, it's changed, man. It has changed drastically, and not in a good way when it comes to access and things like that. And this new generation of coaches, they don't want it. They don't want it. And, it only takes one, but I think that's what the NFL is always hoping for, is that somebody steps up and says, yeah, we want to do it. And Dan Campbell, to a certain degree, did it last year, didn't want to do it again. And they're hoping that somebody volunteers, and it's becoming abundantly clear nobody's volunteering. So they're going to have to make the Jets do it.
Then here's where I'm going with this. You went to Smolensky. I'll jump him. Jeff Lurie, owner of the Philadelphia Eagles. And John's got a good column about Jeff Lurie on his Sports Illustrated website if you want to check it out, about Jeff Lurie is actually the new norm here in Philadelphia. But he's the boss. He is the top of the food chain. He is the one who should be able to dictate things for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jerry Jones just got, $25 million from Netflix to do a documentary about the Dallas Cowboys. How many Super Bowls have the Philadelphia Eagles, have the Dallas Cowboys won in the last one? Zippity doodah, 0. Yet who's getting a $25 million check from Netflix? Jerry Jones. Why? Because he gets it. Because he understands promoting his product. He understands being out there and part of it in the life. Why wouldn't Jeff Lurie say, this is good for the Philadelphia Eagles? Coach, we've got editorial control over it after the fact. After they shoot it, we can control it. What's the downside here, Coach? If he calls Sirianni into his office, why would
he could certainly do it. He could certainly do it and put his foot down and said, Nick, this is good for the organization. We have to do it, make do. But he doesn't want to. He's not that kind of guy. He's not. I mean, certainly if he woke up this morning and changed his mind, he can do whatever he wants, but he's not going to do it to his head coach, and his head coach doesn't want to do it. So, I mean, if you're looking for a villain here, it is Nick Sirianni. I mean, he's the one who is.
I don't want to beat up on Sirianni by himself, because nobody in the NFL wants to do it. So if it's coach directive, it's all 32 coaches in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think there's a bunch of business people around the NFL who would want to do it for their particular teams. But most teams, and Jerry's a notable exception. Jerry's kind of a wild card, obviously. He will put his foot in everything. And most owners aren't going to do that. And, from a business standpoint, like people always say Jerry Jones shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Not, some people. You don't understand why he's in the Hall of Fame. He's in the Hall of Fame because of what he's done for this industry, and how much, as Jody is pointing out, how much money he has made for the NFL. He's a Hall of Famer. He's first ballot in Andrew Brandt's Business Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Famer from that perspective. From a football perspective, it's kind of a pain in the ass at times if you're a coach. And you know what
the funny thing is, John? I apologize for interrupting you. if you go back and check the history, he doesn't fire coaches when you think that he would fire coaches, when there's reason to fire coach, where a coach would be on a hot seat. He's actually a little bit more forgiving and gives them
but not from that perspective, not from the George Steinbrenner. He's going to fire everybody before George kind of calmed down later in life. And he would fire, how many times he hired and fired Billy Martin. I mean, he was just insane at a certain point, but not to that level. But he's doing press conference after games. He's doing weekly radio spots, and you got to deal with that as a head coach. Oh, Jerry said blah blah blah. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes,
and that's not good for the head coach, no matter how you slice it. And Jeffrey Lurie, as I kind of wrote, is, been very successful for people that don't realize it, and has turned this organization into one of the most well-regarded in the NFL. And part of that is because he does his business behind the scenes for the most part. And he doesn't crave the camera. He doesn't crave Bob Angelo coming into his office and putting a boom mic in front of his face, and that helps his coaching staff. Does it help the Eagles business wise? They're not hurting,
right?
So,
they're not going to start a GoFundMe page for the Eagles. You're right on that.
Yeah. So could they be more valuable by doing some of this other stuff? Probably, but he would rather win, and fans should certainly appreciate that.
They should, and they almost pulled it off last year with the Super Bowl appearance. I did look it up. We were talking. Was it Ray? I asked. I thought it was Ray rather than Bob. Teams that went to the Super Bowl, lost, and then go back again. Ray said only 8 times has it happened.
3, I believe. 3? Is it 3?
3 winners.
Yeah,
only 3 times has the team won. The team's gone back the next year 8 times. So it's 3-5 in their record of doing it 8 times. But it's only been once in the last 40 plus years. Go back to the 70s. The Cowboys did it, lost the Super Bowl, went back and won. The Dolphins did it, losing to the Cowboys, then went and won the next year. I think it was the Garo Yepremian game. The only team that's done it in the last 40 years is the New England Patriot team that lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, and they came back and beat the Rams the next year. That's it. The last 40 plus years, it's happened once. So the Eagles are trying to knock off a almost 40-year trend by going to the Super Bowl, losing, but then getting back and winning it the next year. It's an up.
Yeah, but you know what? But obviously, statistically, and as Ray pointed out, 57 is not a small sample size. However, all the good teams are in the AFC. It is set up for the Eagles. I can't even, there's going to be teams, we know there's going to be teams better than expected, worse than expected. Injuries are going to be a big part of it. But other than San Francisco, and maybe if you want to really go out on a limb, maybe Dallas, some of these other teams that I've said, Detroit, Seattle, they might make the playoffs. They might win divisions. Well, Seattle's case, not even win the division,
right?
But they might make the playoffs. I can't even envision them being a legitimate Super Bowl contender. There's not a lot of roadblocks for the Eagles to get back. Now, win it, that's a different kettle of fish.
They got to win that last game, John. They didn't win that last game last year.
Yeah,
they can get there again. We're talking about winning that last game.
Yeah. But if you're in the game, you got a better chance to win it than if you're not in it.
That's very true. At a bare minimum, 50-50. Well, maybe slightly less because the Eagles were a slight underdog last year. But all right, if you're not in it, you can't win it. All right, brother, that was a fun show. I had a great time talking to both Ray Dinger and Bob Angelo today. Thank you very much for booking both of those guys. I enjoyed it greatly. I hope our streamers did as well. Thank you very much for streaming in. We are just 2 weeks away from the opening of Eagles camp. I'm going to lose my fight. He's going to be running in to cover Nick Sirianni at all.
Still don't have a schedule, by the way. Still don't have.
Are you kidding me? You got no shot. We got 14 days. You'll get a schedule in 13. You're not getting a schedule ahead. This is the Philadelphia Eagles we're talking about. Didn't we just talk for the last 2 hours how keeping news to a minimum and not letting anybody behind the curtain know what the hell's going on? Why the hell do you think you're going to get special preference?
We need to plan, Eagles. We need to plan. Just like you need to plan.
Yeah, just like the Eagles will jump on Hard Knocks. That'll be the show tomorrow. Eagles, surprisingly, okay, Hard Knocks. Yeah, right. Not happening. John won't be getting his Eagles schedule tomorrow, nor will we be announcing that the Eagles are going to be the Hard Knock team. Or at least we don't think so. Well, tune in tomorrow and find out. Partner, I'm in. You in for tomorrow?
Yeah, let's do it.
We will be right back here on Birds 365 in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.